Following the theme of the pizza garden this year, we're going to try and make a pizza sauce with some of the fresh tomatoes from the pizza garden, along with the onion and the garlic and some of the herbs. Now what we're going to do, however, is a little bit different than some of the things that we've tried to preserve in the past, because we want to have enough pizza sauce to last us for several months, but rather than canned, we're going to make one that goes into the freezer. Now in the pan already I have 2 large onions and 4 cloves of garlic, and to that I'm going to add about 5 pounds of the paste tomatoes. Now, I let the onion and the garlic get limp a little bit, 5 to 10 minutes in there. And we're just going to stir these together, and we're going to add some herbs to this. Now this is a freezer type of sauce, and ingredients will act differently in the freezer than they would in canning or in normal eating. In the freezer, things like onion, herbs, and salt are basically going to disappear in flavor, whereas things like garlic and pepper are going to get much more strong. So you want to be a little bit careful with the seasonings that you use. To that I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt, and since this is for flavor, that's optional. You can add as much or as little as you'd like. A teaspoon of paprika, let me see here, a 3/4 teaspoon of pepper. Now remember, that will get stronger as it sits, so don't taste it now for seasoning. You'll need to taste it again later. I'm also going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of dried rosemary, and you want to crush that a little bit so the flavors come out. 1/4 of a teaspoon of anise seed, and then 2 tablespoons of each oregano and basil, or if you're using the dried, then you'll add 1 tablespoon of each of those. And finally, a tablespoon of sugar. These will be stirred together so that they're all well blended. And then the last ingredient that we're going to put in is, again, you have some flexibility on this one also. Traditional sauces often have wine in them, which is what I'm using today, and you can use a favorite wine of yours, a red wine or a white wine, whichever you would choose. Or if you don't think that you want to use either one of those, you can go ahead and just use water. It will have a little bit less strength to the flavor if you do so, but it'll still be fine. These we're going to bring to a simmer and put the lid on and let it simmer for an hour. Then we'll take the lid off and let it simmer for another 50 minutes. You'll need to stir it fairly often during that time in order to make sure that it doesn't stick. Now looking at the kind of tomato that we used, this is a fairly important thing to try and do. If you can get a paste tomato or a sauce tomato, the walls are much thicker. There's a lot less of the liquid in here. Now the liquid is important around the seeds and whatnot. We do want to retain that if possible. This kind of tomato sauce we're making today will have seeds in it as opposed to the commercial varieties, which usually don't. But that has the pectin around it, which will also help it thicken up. Although some of that may be destroyed a little bit during the cooking time, it will help with the thickening of the sauce. Now because this is something that's going into the freezer, you have some flexibility here that you don't have when you can tomato sauces. With the canned tomato sauce, you need to follow the directions very precisely and put in the exact amount of ingredients. With this one, you had the flexibility if you wanted to put in green peppers or other types of things, or other herbs and whatnot. You have that possibility. You could also put in mushrooms towards the end of the cooking time so that you have the kind of sauce you'd like. This one's going to be a chunky type of sauce. Stirring it from time to time will help break up some of the tomato pieces. I cut them fairly small, but again, if you like a chunky type of sauce on your pizza, then just leave it as it is. If you want it finer, go ahead and put it in the food processor when you're ready to serve. Once you get about the volume or the consistency that you like, go ahead and take it off the stove. Now you'll need to let it cool a little bit before you put it in the freezer. However, if possible, try and do that in the refrigerator. It will cool it a lot faster and you have less problems or potential problems developing. At that point, you want to put it in an airtight container so that you won't lose moisture during storage, and you won't have a lot of other smells coming out of the container during storage as well. Any kind of official freezer container, glass would work very nicely with this kind of thing because it does have a lot of herbs, and it has also the onion and the garlic, which will provide a lot of flavor, and also some vegetable oil in here. We had a little bit of vegetable oil when we browned the onion, and those kinds of things tend to adhere to the plastic, so if you're going to use the plastic again, a glass container might be a good choice. You'd fill a pint container up to a 1/2 inch head space, a quart container up to an inch head space. Another option would be to use an old ice cube tray and fill it individually, and that way if somebody in your family wants to make mini pizzas, they can thaw out 1 little cube or 2 little cubes at a time, and they'd be set to go. I hope you'll enjoy your pizza this winter. This will keep for you about 9 months in the freezer if you keep it at 0 degrees. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.